Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Taking a look at some of these programs across the country that can win national championships in 2023. And we're on the Clemson Tigers. This is a team that, it had some struggles last year in Clemson terms. This is still a very talented team that's going to have an elite defense. And there's been some shakeups on the offensive side of the ball that we're very excited about. I know Clemson fans are very excited about. Going to be giving you guys some reasons why we think Clemson can win a national championship in 2023. Now, before we get into it again, just want to say thank you to you guys, and especially the Clemson fans. We've talked so much Clemson football in terms of the recruiting trail. Excited to talk about Clemson and what they're going to look like in 2023 on the football field. You guys have shown a ton of love, though. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown. And without further ado, Dale, our first reason, it starts on the offensive side of the ball, and it doesn't even have to do with a single player on the offensive side of the ball. It's the new offensive play calling that we're going to see in 2023.
And I think anyone who watched these last 2 years just kind of felt like they needed a change. It was just, there's something wrong with that offense. And again, I don't think it was all DJU. I think there's something there with him. I think he's a solid player. But it just, for whatever reason, there was no rhythm. There was no excitement. It's just a very stale, bland offense.
There was no identity. Like everything they tried to do, they didn't have like, okay, well, who can we lean on? What player can we lean on? What plays can we lean on? There was no identity to that offense, and you said it best. There's no rhythm. You saw DJU look great at times, and then you saw him look like he never thrown a football before. I think that has to do with just the lack of rhythm. You bring in a guy like Garrett Riley. In terms of the young offensive play callers, there might not be a better one out there rising through the ranks than Garrett Riley.
And you saw what he did with TCU. Again, a guy in Max Duggan who had his like moments of playing really good football, but a lot of struggles, a lot of inconsistencies. And he took him and made him a Heisman finalist. And then that TCU offense exploded last year with the addition of Riley and what he's able to do. There's just, again, it's just a new mind, a new something to spark this offense. And then, honestly, all the Clemson fans I've seen talking in our comments, Jeff Scott will probably have a huge impact too, because when Clemson was really cooking with like Watson and so forth, Jeff Scott was there and he was dynamite. He was just he just did such a good job at Clemson.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing back Jeff Scott, and then there was just an element of, and I know Dabo always wants to hire within and like keep it in house, but that offense over the last couple of years, like I'm happy that Dabo decided, okay, we got to get a new mind in this program. I don't think there's a better dude than Garrett Riley. And you go back to that TCU offense and you watch it. There's a reason Max Duggan didn't go drafted in the first 6 rounds. Like, it's not like he's a generationally talented quarterback. What Garrett Riley was an expert at doing is putting his guys in positions to be successful. And that offense is predicated in space, getting your guys, your playmakers, the football in space and letting them go to work. Clemson has the guys. I really do think. And then it's just, okay, we got to get an offensive scheme that lets our guys go cook. Now, the second reason, and this one is kind of an obvious one, Cade Klubnik being the stud that I think everyone thinks he is. And I think it's massive that you have Garrett Riley, who Cade Klubnik's skill set is perfect for what Garrett Riley wants to do. Cade Klubnik can absolutely burn. He might need to put on some weight if they're going to run him like they ran Max Duggan. But in terms of being an athlete, kind of like J.J. McCarthy, he's not like the biggest guy. But when he gets out in space, like, he can hurt defenses. I expect Cade Klubnik to use his legs. But also, in terms of getting the balls to the other playmakers as well, if Cade Klubnik can take that step, this offense, I think, is going to be night and day different than what you saw in 2022.
And I think what you want to see with him is the year being the guy. And we've talked about this a lot, but like when you're splitting duties or not even splitting duties, like DJU, he was the starter through and through. And when Cade Klubnik came in, he did bring some energy, brought a bit of a spark most of the time. It'll be interesting to see how much better he gets being the full-time guy, along with, again, what you mentioned, having probably what we think is going to be a far better coaching staff who is able to get a lot more out of him.
I think there's so much truth, and I'm not. We're obviously Michigan guys, so drawing some Michigan parallels. But having a quarterback that gets the full offseason as quarterback one in spring practice, like, this is your offense. You command the huddle. Cade Klubnik was a true freshman last year. barely getting any quarterback one reps. Now it's his offense. Those are his guys to be a leader with. I think you're going to see massive steps from K. Klubnik because if you follow high school recruiting, like there's not many more talented quarterbacks across the country than a guy like K. Klubnik. And this is another kind of bugaboo for Clemson is the pass catching playmakers. It was something that when you noted when this Clemson offense was on top, the wide receivers they were putting out were next level. It's been kind of a drought in a way. And we talked on the recruiting trail. They're obviously putting an emphasis on that, bringing in guys like TJ Moore, Brian West into the fold. But what they have in-house right now heading into 2023, although they might be young, I expect these guys to take massive steps in 2023.
Well, in one thing you do kind of have now is like a leader in a sense in Antonio Williams. I mean, what he did last year just as only a true freshman, just really dominant. And you really haven't seen that from a Clemson wideout in a while. It's like you've had some guys we thought were going to be good, Nagata, Joe, EJ Williams, and it just they never could quite get into that step. We were always waiting. Oh, when are they going to break out? Like Antonio Williams, as a true freshman, I would say broke out. Like he played exceptionally good football, and then you get to fill it in with Bo Collins and Adam Randall, and Randall's probably now the guy who really,
man,
I think all Clemson fans are looking for to really be amazing.
Adam Randall's my guy. I like follow him on Instagram. That dude's a workout. Like, he looks like Thanos out there. Very excited for him. And I think another optimistic part, we talk like this is a discussion in college football a lot is, okay, you have a ton of guys returning. Are they young guys who can take steps, or are they just like, you know what you got and they're just going to be at like this group is all young dudes that you kind of expect to take steps. Like for Antonio Williams going into only his second year of college football. Adam Randall, we haven't really seen because he's kind of been banged up, but he has every single tool in the toolbox to be an elite wide receiver. Even Bo Collins, the guy who struggled with injuries and like also a younger player. You could also throw Cole Turner into that list. And then the tight end, Jake Briningstool. Like there's like a bunch of weapons, and we're not even getting to a guy like Will Shipley or Phil Maffa, who are very dangerous in the backfield too. I think you put K. Klubnik, you surround him with what I think is the best Clemson wide receiver group we've seen in a little bit since Justin Ross. And I mean, he obviously with the injuries, that was tough. This is the better wide receiver room we've seen in the last couple of years, combined with a new play caller and Garrett Riley, some really good running backs. And the last piece of the puzzle that we think could be really good for this Clemson offense is just an improved offensive line.
Yeah, and really what you have is a guy in Blake Miller who kind of emerged out of nowhere to be one of the better players on that offensive line as only a true freshman. Again, he's going to move over to left now from right. I think you do lose Jordan McFadden, but given what Blake Miller did last year, I think he's a guy who's got much more potential to be one of those like all-American type tackles. Like Jordan McFadden could play for sure, but I think Blake Miller could be really good. And then you look on the other side at tackle, Tristan Leigh is a guy who, when he came into college, he was like, a top 5 recruit in high school. You know, he's got the talent to do it. You might have one of the better tackle groups you've had at Clemson in a while, because for a long time, it's been rather inconsistent. And then you're just going to fill in these interior guys who have now been there for so long and have frankly gotten so much better since like that Georgia game that I think
that 2021 year, we said that. And that's what I say is like this improved offensive line. It's not necessarily the personnel that's improved. It's just these guys have taken steps. I remember talking after that Georgia game in 2021, like this Clemson offensive line is not a national championship caliber group. It's a young group. They're small. They need to be developed. You saw it improve in 2022. And I don't think there's much of a reason to doubt that it's going to be an improved group again in 2023. You have a lot of experience on the inside now. You have Jordan McFadden, as good as he was, he should have been playing guard. That being said, they didn't have any tackles to really trust, so they stick Jordan McFadden. He's going to play guard at the next level. They stick him out there left tackle because that's kind of what they needed to do. I think now you have, like you said, legit all-American caliber tackles with a really experienced group on the inside, Will Putnam anchoring in that center spot. Although the personnel might not be different, I expect this offensive line to, again, continue to take steps from that 20.
Especially because, like, you've seen it now. Like, they were way better last year than they were in 21, and you pretty much do have the bulk of it back. So I don't see why you wouldn't think it'd get better.
All right, let's start to cook, though, because as much as, like, the Clemson offense, when you talk about why Clemson can win a national championship, the defense isn't a question. Like, this defense is going to be a very good group. We wanted to hit on the offensive side of the ball first because, again, if they do break through, which they certainly can, it's this offense is taking not just a small step forward, it's taking a meaningful step forward, which, again, think they can. This defense, though, continues to be just one of the better groups in the country, and it starts with the front seven. And yes, the defensive line, we'll talk about some of those guys. I think you're looking at the best linebacker group in the country, and I don't even know if it's that close. Like, Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter, two guys that, if you're talking about first-round linebackers, those two are it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You lose from last year some players, but it's like
Trent Simpson, they were just using him wrong, in my opinion. Like, Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter, I think this group is almost going to be better because they're.
Well, that's the problem, because like you had to play Trenton Simpson in a sense, because like there were things he could do really well, but I don't think he's as complete as these two they have now, and the fact that these two aren't on the field they're all the time. I mean, you want to see them. These two should be probably better players by the time it's all said and done than Simpson. And again, as much as you wanted to see Simpson, you had to almost have Simpson on the field.
I'm kind of interested, Clemson fans, if you want to let us know in the comment section about Trent, because we do like a lot of NFL work, and it just seemed like Trent Simpson, as like physically gifted as he was, I feel like he just wasn't playing in his natural spot, kind of that overhanging role. I'm kind of interested to hear Clemson fans' takes on the usage of Trent Simpson, because it never really seemed to me like they were using him like he should have. But Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter, in terms of just being like solid off-ball backers who can blitz that A-gap, can even kick him out to the edge and blitz him off the edge, like those guys truly are good. And the other part of the front seven is the defensive line, where you get Tyler Davis and Rook. Oh, again, you talk about like the linebacker duo potentially being one of the better ones in the country. I think the best. I mean, this interior group with Tyler Davis, Rook, and then you add a guy like Peter Woods coming in as a true freshman who's going to play as a freshman. Like, the interior defensive line is elite for Clemson.
I mean, to get those two guys back to like Rook Aurora,
I thought day 2 picks. Rook, for sure.
I thought he was going to be a second-round pick, possibly even at the back end of the first. Like, just to be that long, that athletic, and not get pushed around in the inside, it's just you don't see that many of those type of guys. And then Tyler Davis, again, he's just been solid for forever. Like, you know what you're getting with that.
I remember us watching Ruocco in December before he said he's going to come back for another year, and we're like, this dude's a top 50.
Well, you're watching for the other guys, like the Miles Murphy.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
And then it's like, well, who's this 33 guy who's dominating football games?
Yeah, I completely agree. And then you add in a guy like Peter Woods. Now, the edge spot's interesting because I think it could be a solid group. Man, Xavier Thomas, like, knock on wood for this dude. I'm like, I don't even know. I'm going to say this is going to sound weird, but like, I'm like proud of him and how he's man. Like, he comes in as a top 3 national recruit, struggles with injuries. He's coming back for one more year. He was banged up in the spring. I don't know if there's a guy in the country I'm rooting for more than a guy like Xavier Thomas to really turn it. It sounds weird because I'm this young kid saying, like, I'm legit proud of him and him coming back. And that probably speaks to just Dabo Swinney's culture. Like,
I was going to say, like, that is the Clemson culture. I mean, guys stay in the program. There's not a ton of turnover, and frankly, they get better. It's like KJ Henry, you saw, like, just get better and better until he turned himself into a legit NFL player. It's like, can Xavier Thomas do that same thing? That'll be a huge part, because you're right. You don't have a ton of returning production in terms of things you know about this edge class. Like, you got some guys who you think can play, but it will be someone's going to need to step up and take over, if you will.
But in terms of like Xavier Thomas having the juice to be like a first-team All-ACC guy, he has that juice if he can just stay healthy and put it on the field. Again, not a guy I'm rooting for more than a guy in Xavier Thomas. And then the last part, and this was like this is going to sound weird to some Clemson fans, that a little bit of a sore spot. I remember watching the Wake Forest game. It's like the secondary is just barbecue chicken right now. Wake Forest throwing all over them. That group, kind of similar to the offensive line, like, continue to get meaningfully better throughout the season. And you look at who they have coming back, it's another one of those examples that the personnel is very similar, but a lot of these guys were just young kids last year who are now really starting to put it together. A guy like Nate Wiggins, I would not be surprised if we're talking about Nate Wiggins being a first-round NFL draft pick in 12 months from now, because he checks every single box that you want in terms of what a cornerback, what you want in a boundary cornerback.
Well, that's what you got, two cornerbacks who are long and get their hands on footballs and can take it away. And that's kind of the evolution I feel like you started to see them make in terms of their, honestly, over the course of the year. Like, yeah, that Wake Forest game was really ugly, but then you saw moments, especially like down the stretch against UNC and some other games where they were playing really good. And you got two guys who are really big, really long, and rangy. I think this team should be taking the football away consistently. Like, they do have that skill set.
Yeah, you combined a ball hawking group with a really, really aggressive front seven. Like just to shout out some other names that I really like. Andrew Makuba. I mean, he was a true freshman All-American, and then he like struggles a little bit year 2. I think he's going to take some meaningful steps in year 3. You have like a veteran in Sheridan Jones, but then a guy like Torino Pride. He's a dog. Like I think Torino Pride.
He's going to be starting for sure.
And so you take a look at the secondary, and I get there were some sore spots and sore games where that group looked not very good. But again, kind of like this Clemson offensive line, the personnel is not changing, but it's like these guys have shown the ability that they're getting better, and that's what matters. When you have like a 5th-year, 6th-year guy, and maybe that's kind of why I'm talking about Sheridan Jones like that. It's like, okay, you maybe just know what you have, and I don't know if you're going to see many steps. Torino Pride, Nate Wiggins, Andrew Makuba. You could say Jaden Lewis. Like those guys, I think will take steps. And I think this group, although it's going to look very similar to 2022, will be a much better group in 2023. Now, the last piece of the puzzle here is taking a look at the schedule for Clemson. Because, again, you're playing in the ACC. You probably do have to run the table. And I look at this. I love Clemson's schedule. Dill, we talked about it actually last night, I believe. I don't know if they'll be dogs in any game this year because the 2 big games you have, you get them both at home. Florida State at home September 23rd, and then Notre Dame at home November 4th. And outside of those 2 games, are you picking them to lose a game this year?
No, I'm honestly I don't know that I'm picking. Definitely not picking them to lose Notre Dame. Florida State will be interesting.
It's going to be a massive one.
100% sure what Florida State's going to be. I do think they're going to be really good. But there is still until like a couple more years, I'm still going to have that Clemson bias where they're just a dominant foot. Like,
well, let's remind that Clemson won the ACC last year.
You don't pick against Bama, you don't pick against Clemson, you don't pick against Georgia, you don't pick against Ohio State. Those have been the 4 teams for the last 10 years who are teams like in their conference. It's like set your watch to it, they're going to win it. That's still kind of how I think about Clemson. So until like I get proved wrong, and Dabo, again, he did what he had to do, I think, to make this team better and bring them back to that era when they were really running it by making the changes he did on offense, which I think anyone who was watching Clemson felt like it was needed. So, again, Clemson still, to me, they're still the team.
And I love the schedule. Like, and it comes down to, like, as much as you want to talk about the team, and that's what we spent most of this talking about why this team is going to be good, the schedule's a big part of it. And, like, you get Florida State and Notre Dame, your 2 biggest games, the 2 games that if you're talking about swing games that are, like, I don't know if they'll win, you get them both at home, I think that's massive. Because, like, yeah, Miami might be good, but I'm picking Clemson to beat Miami. And even South Carolina, like, Clemson's coming to get their lick back. You go on the road. That's going to be – that game might be a blast. That could be Clemson playing – to get to a national championship game, to obviously go to the ACC championship. But that is going to be a very, very fun game. Clemson obviously coming to get their lick back. Now, again, this is why we think Clemson can win a national championship. Will it happen? We'll see. A lot of these things have to come together. Like the new offense has to come together. Kate Klubnik has to take those steps. But this group, like, it's still one of the more talented teams in the country. It's still some of the best culture you see across college football. Clemson, certainly a national title contender. Appreciate you guys checking the boys out. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.